In the early 1970s, legendary Imagineer Marc Davis and Disney were hard at work designing what could have been the largest and possibly greatest Disney attraction ever. However, it never came to fruition, and it's all our fault. Okay, that's a little melodramatic. We'll never know if it would have been the greatest attraction, and while Disney's reaction to fan demand did ultimately contribute to the cancellation of it, it's a stretch to say it's all our fault. Let's go back to the early 1970s for the full story. You see, Disneyland and the Magic Kingdom were alike in many ways, but as much as Disney wanted to carry over all of the best parts over from Disneyland to the East Coast, they also wanted to try and make sure Disney World would be a unique experience. They also felt it was important to make changes that took into account the region the park was in and the people visiting it. That's why Disneyland Paris doesn't have our Tomorrowland, and Shanghai Disney doesn't have a Main Street USA. With that in mind, Disney felt that putting a Pirates of the Caribbean in Orlando, which was relatively close to the actual Caribbean, wouldn't be appealing or exciting for guests from the region. So Disney opted to leave the ride out of the plans for the Magic Kingdom. However, the ride design itself was a hit, and Imagineer Marc Davis felt that creating a spiritual successor to the ride for Disney World would be an opportunity to improve on everything he felt was wrong with Pirates and make it even better. This new attraction, rather than focusing on pirates, would instead focus on the Wild West. It was called the Western River Expedition, and had it come to fruition, it would have been part of a project called Thunder Mesa Mountain, which would have been 4 interwoven attractions in one elaborate space. The expedition indoor boat ride would have been the main draw, featuring a run-in with banditos, a bank robbery in the town of Dry Gulch, a Western musical number, and a meeting with Native Americans. The ride was even designed to cross paths with the Walt Disney World Railroad, which would be passing through the show building briefly, similar to the way the People Mover and Space Mountain intersect today. It would have been large in order to portray the vast scope of the West, which meant it would have required an even larger show building than anything built before it. In order to hide that building, however, the space would be built to resemble a Western mesa. It wouldn't have just been for show either, because plans for the mesa also included a log flume ride, a runaway mine train ride, and a walking trail. It's almost hard to classify the scope of a project like this. You can't really call it an attraction considering the mesa was planned to include multiple rides, yet at the same time Disney had never seen rides so tightly woven together before. It was as if it was going to be a land and an attraction all at the same time. So what happened? Well, Disney decided early into development to put the project on hold to focus on answering the most common questions guests were asking Disney at the time, which was, where was Pirates of the Caribbean? The attraction was wildly popular on the West Coast, and so guests were confused as to how the Magic Kingdom could open without it. With the lack of the ride being the #1 complaint, Disney decided to quickly put together a shortened version of Pirates for Adventureland. While on hold, it was proposed that the runaway mine train ride be split off from the Thunder Mesa project and built as its own attraction. This idea worked out, however, even that standalone attraction was put on hold after Pirates was complete, because Disney wanted to instead build a ride based on an old Walt idea for a futuristic version of the Matterhorn. The ride was called Space Mountain. Eventually though, by the end of the decade, the standalone ride would get the go-ahead. We would get that runaway train experience with the Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. As for the Western River Expedition and the rest of Thunder Mesa, the project was eventually dropped due to a number of reasons. For one, the gas shortages of the 1970s resulted in a decline in attendance that forced Disney to be more economical with their spending. On top of that, by the end of the decade, Disney was well underway in development of Epcot Center, which would ultimately prove to be an expensive project that would balloon up to $1.4 billion. Lastly, by 1977, the lead Imagineer on the project, Marc Davis, would retire, leaving the ride without its head cheerleader. So while it wasn't really the guests' fault that this massive interwoven set of attractions ultimately didn't get built, I can't help but wonder, what would have happened if the demand for Pirates wasn't so high in Disney World? Would the project have gone forward? Would Thunder Mesa Mountain have been everything it promised? I guess we'll never know, but it's fun to imagine.